Hare Krishna. India Heritage Foundation extends a very warm welcome to every one of you for today's special session on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, uh, Simha Guru, who is the spiritual master of our beloved Srila Prabhupada. Let's begin the program by invoking blessings of Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Nami Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So today, in honor of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, we observed his disappearance day. This was just a few days back. Let us sing this very special bhajan composed by one of our Purva Acharya, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, which is entitled as Je Anilo Prema Dhana Karuna Prachur. As I just get started. All right, there we go. Je Anilo Prema Dhana Karuna Prachur. Je Anilo Prema Dhana Karuna Prachur. Hen Prabhu Kotha Gela Acharya Thakur Kaha Mora Swarup Kaha Sanata Kaha Mora Swarupa Kaha Sanata Kaha Dasa Raghu Natha Patita Pavan Kaha Dasa Raghu Natha Patita Pavan कहाँ मोरा भट्टा जुगा, कहाँ कबीरा, कहाँ मोरा भट्टा जुगा, कहाँ कबीरा, एक काले कोथा गेला गोरा नटरा, एक काले कोथा गेला गोरा नटरा, पाषाणे कुटीबो माथा, आनाले पाशिबो, पाषाणे कुटीबो माथा, आनाले पाशिबो, गौरांगा गुणेरा निधे कोथा गेले पाबो, गौरांगा गुणेरा निधे कोथा गेले पाबो, से सब संगीरा संगे जे कोइलो बिलास, से सब संगीरा संगे जे कोइलो बिलास, से संग न पाइया कांदे नरोता मदास, से संग न पाइया कांदे नरोता मदास, जे अनिलो प्रेम धना करुणा प्रचुर, जे अनिलो प्रेम धना करुणा प्रचुर, हेलो प्रभु कथा गेला आचार्य ठाकुर, हेलो प्रभु कथा गेला आचार्य ठाकुर, जय भक्ति सिद्धांत स्वामी प्रभुपादा, भक्ति सिद्धांत शीला प्रभुपादा, जय भक्ति सिद्धांत शीला प्रभुपादा, भक्ति सिद्धांत शीला प्रभुपादा, जय राधा कृष्ण चंद्र, राधा कृष्ण चंद्र राधे, जय राधा कृष्ण चंद्र, राधा कृष्ण चंद्र राधे, जय कृष्ण बलराम, कृष्ण बलराम, कृष्ण बलराम वृंदावन धाम, जय कृष्ण बलराम, कृष्ण बलराम, कृष्ण बलराम जय वृंदावन धाम, जय गौरानिताय, 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 जय गौरानिताय, जय गौरानिताय, 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 जय गौरानिताय, जय जय प्रभुपाद, 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 जय जय गुरुदेव प्रभुपाद, गुरुदेव प्रभुपाद, जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र अभय भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर महाराज की, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की, हरिनाम संकीर्तन की, जनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल,
हरि बोल,
हरे कृष्णा,
हरे कृष्णा।
I hope I'm audible. I'm not using my Bluetooth I previously have experience of this breaking down, but I hope it's clear now. Maybe I can quickly even change into that. Am I audible? Loud and clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, great. Okay. So it's a very blessed day, I would say. We're all here to speak and hear about the life and teachings of a glorious Vaishnava Acharya. And he's the spiritual master of our Srila Prabhupada. And it is all of good fortune that we are here to remember his life and activities. It is Prabhupada used to, A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he used to, when he was asked about his spiritual master, so he would simply say, my Maharaj was a Vaikuntha man. He was a Vaikuntha man. So, what was his life like? And what were his challenges? What was his contribution? This is interesting to me. And this is in whatever short time that we have, I will try my best to share a brief summary of his life and teachings. Lord Krishna had in his Bhagavad Gita, he shared the message of complete surrender. Krishna demanded surrender. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam. That was Krishna's demand. And that was actually Krishna's kindness, because he was letting us know of what is our position and what is his position. So he said that abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender. This is Krishna's words. But to a large extent, Krishna's instructions were not very successful, in the sense, except for a few of his close associates, like the Pandavas, Kunti Maharani, Vidura, Bhishma, and few others, who were his devotees. Many felt that who is this Krishna? What is this? He's asking us to surrender to him. What does he think of himself? And they chose to remain away from Krishna's devotion service. And the Lord is very unhappy when he sees that the conditioned souls choose not to engage in his devotion service, because that would mean that they have to continue their material existence, which is full of anxiety, misery for a conditioned soul. So in order to elevate them and to help them come closer to their original constitutional position of being Krishna's eternal loving devotees. So Krishna advented once again in Kali Yuga. This is 500 years ago, in Mayapur, West Bengal, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this time, He did not ask people to surrender to Krishna or to surrender to him. He never even declared himself as a supreme Lord like Krishna did. This incarnation, Sri Chaitanya, he is counted as Namo Mahavadanyaya, which means the most munificent, most liberal, most compassionate incarnation ever of the Supreme Lord. He did not declare himself as the Supreme Lord. He did not ask anybody to surrender it to him. So his only request was that you please chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. That was his only request. You please chant Hare Krishna and become a devotee of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. So, the activities and pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, these are predicted in many scriptures like the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vishnu Sahasranam, and many Upanishads, many Puranas, his life and advent is discussed. And incarnation is recognized by scriptural evidence. And his life and activities are predicted in the Shastra. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. So, during his advent, he inaugurated the Harinam Sankirtan. The Sankirtana movement, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, was the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, wherein every member of society, regardless of their gender, of their caste, mind you, 500 years ago, India was very deeply rooted in the unfortunate evils of caste system. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a revolutionary social reformer in the sense he invited everybody to come and participate and receive love of Krishna. Everybody he encouraged. He accepted disciples from all classes of society. And the upper caste, the Brahmanas, they're very unhappy with him. And they lodged protests against him. How can you initiate people who are not Brahmanas and make them Brahmanas? How can you make them, how can you give Diksha to such people? And so there were so many challenges that he had to face. Despite all of that, he was very successful, and millions and millions of people, they took up the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Wherever he went, he propagated. You may know about this very great devotee by name Santa Tukaram, who propagated Sankirtana in Maharashtra. He was a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Likewise, there are many stalwart personalities of his time, like Prataprudra, Gajapati Prataprudra Maharaj, who was the king of Odisha at that time. He was a disciple. Sarabham Bhattacharya, who was the renowned logician and the spiritual master of many sannyasis, he became a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prakashananda Saraswati, who was the leader of more than 10,000 sannyasis in Varanasi, he became a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So like that, he was extremely successful in his mission and reached the Hare Krishna mantra to the mass of people, and he wanted this Sankirtan movement to be spread and broadcast all over the world. And it was his prophecy. He said, "Prithvi te aache yatrati grama sarvatra prachara hoibe mora nama." This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prediction that every town and village will chant my holy name, his holy name, his Krishna himself, his holy name will be chanted everywhere. He prophesied. And how this was to come, because at that time the movement was very popular in Odisha, it was very popular in Bengal and other parts. In fact, Chaitanya went all over India. He traveled in the South India, he went to Maharashtra, he went to many other places. So wherever he went in those pockets, it was all Sankirtana movement was very popular at that time. But then, over a period of time, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis, and after the Goswamis, a few other Acharyas, and then as time passed by, unfortunately, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which was presented in its most purest form by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, started uh, uh, to deteriorate. The followers of uh, the followers of Vaishnavism, of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, unfortunately, began adopting uh, many uh, deviant practices. So much so, the reputation of Vaishnavism uh, had deteriorated to such an extent that it was being in a looked down in a very shameful, because what was happening was there were uh, these Vaishnavas, the so-called Vaishnavas, who were uh, imitating the highest mellows of devotion service. There were these men who used to dress themselves like women, and as though they had become the gopis of Krishna, and they would go to the temples of Krishna, and they would dance for Krishna, and not only that, these so although they were not situated on the platform of pure love for Krishna like the gopis, they were imitating those exalted moods and bhavas, uh, the gopi bhava. They were imitating. So uh, such people were called the sahajiyas. Sahajiyas are people who take things very cheaply. The highest mellow of love of God became some very cheap, sentimental fanaticism. And many of them were not even following the regulative principles. They were indulging in illicit sex. They were indulging in many obnoxious activities. So that way, the reputation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism had plummeted and hit rock bottom. And uh, so uh, it is to the credit of Bhakti Vinod, the father of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. He was born in the mid 19th century, and uh, he crusaded against all these illegitimate practices. He was a very high government officer, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was a magistrate in the British Raj. Uh, Practically, he was next to the government, and he was very reputed as a very efficient uh, and very sincere magistrate. And on the by the strength of his position in the British Raj, his devotional writings, he wrote more than 100 books uh, to present the original teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and in that way won the confidence of the intelligent men of the society, and exposed all these bogus followers. He exposed these bogus followers. He listed down this group: Karta Baja, Aul, Baul, Nityananda Vamsha. There were some Gaudiya Vaishnavas who were taking the title of Goswami as a hereditary title. Although they had no qualification of a Goswami, the Goswamis were pure devotees of Krishna, and they were completely absorbed in propagating the mission of Mahaprabhu. And their descendants assumed these titles of Goswami as a family title, although they did not represent the spirit and the spiritual qualifications of a Goswami. And they claimed that it was their right. They claimed to be very superior amongst all the Vaishnavas. They claimed themselves to be the custodians of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara. And so, like that, the whole Gaudiya Vaishnava society was in chaos, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is known as the seventh Goswami. And he was the one who discovered the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he pointed out that these people are all bogus and they are to be rejected. And they are deviant from their apasampradaya. So like that, and he wrote, and by his personal endeavor, single-handedly, and mind you, he was a very responsible officer, and he had a large family of 14 children. He was living. He was a grahastha, and he lived as an ideal householder because uh, his children. What kind of children did he produce? His son went on to become an Acharya. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj was his seventh child, and he was so nicely trained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he went on to become such an empowered Acharya who further took the mission forward. So we'll hear more details about that. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to face a lot of struggle. There were many caste brahmanas. Caste brahmanas are those who are born in the family of brahmanas but do not have the qualification of a brahmana. So this is mid 19th century when India was deeply rooted in the evil caste system. And the Brahmanas, they were objecting how Bhaktivinoda Thakur can preach to people who are not Brahmanas and make them, give them initiation, and how he can teach the Vedic literatures. Vedic literatures are meant only for the consumption of the Brahmanas, not to anybody else. And so there were so many such uh, obstacles which he had to face. So one side he had to expose the Sahajiyas and the caste Goswamis, and the other side were the Brahmanas who were opposing against his mission of reaching, propagating and spreading Krishna consciousness to all sections of people. So despite all those challenges, he was able to win the confidence of all the intelligent people of his times, gain their confidence, and he was able to attract many youth uh, to the to the movement that he started. He sought every opportunity to form namahattas and encourage people to chant the holy names of the Lord. He would go along Ganges uh, because he used to. He was born in West Bengal and he was stationed as a magistrate in different places. He was in Puri, then he was sometime in Krishnanagar, and then from there he would visit Mayapur. So like that. So he uh, his was a missionary life. Whole life he devoted to establish the pure teachings of and he brought dignity to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and people started respecting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his movement and his followers and his philosophy. Until then, it was being looked down upon. So he whole life he devoted to uh, establish the pure uh, teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he was in Jagannath Puri, at that time, uh, the magistrate of Puri, is the one who takes care of the temple management. That was the system. Uh, and magistrate was next to the governor, as I said. He was in a very big position. So at that time, uh, he prayed. Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself, he's one of our Purvacharyas. He prayed to Lord Jagannath, and he prayed to Lord Jagannath uh, that he be blessed with a uh, a son who can continue his mission and take the movement and teachings of Lord Chaitanya further, far and wide, all over the world. And in fact, during his own time, Bhaktivinoda, he was he wrote books he was very educated in English and was a magistrate. So he wrote a book, uh, Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya. And he used to send this book to universities around the world. He had sent to McGill University in Canada and to some universities here in the UK and many other places. So it was his, he thought that it was his vision that one day the Westerners will also start following, appreciating Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and start following the Sankirtana movement. He was very eager to see that uh, uh, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya goes all over the world. In fact, in Prabhupada's own words, he says, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the pioneer worldwide Hare Krishna movement. And so he prayed for Jagannath that he be blessed with a son, that one of Lord's personal associates in the spiritual world may descend and become his son, so that he can take up the mission of Lord Chaitanya forward. And in answer to his prayers, he was blessed with a son. And this son was, it is described when Bhaktisiddhanta was born. You know, when the child is born, they remove, they cut the umbilical cord of the child the moment the child is born. So it is said when he was born, his umbilical cord was around his neck like a Brahmin thread. And it was an indication the son is here for a translating mission. And then later, uh, it is when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was called at that time, as a child, he was called as Bimala Prasad. And his mother's name was Bhagavati Devi, and his father was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was also known as K.M. Datta or Kedarnath Datta. Spiritual name, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So it is said when he was a few months old, during the Jagannath Ratha Yatra, so the Jagannath cart was passing by, and it was on the same road that Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house was present. Even now, one can go and see. It's like an historical place, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. It is maintained by one of the Gaudiya monks in Puri, which was the birthplace of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. Even now, it is a place that we can visit. So at that time, as the Supreme Lord Jagannath's cart was passing by in front of his house, the cart stopped there for a while, and Bhagavati Devi, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's mother, she took the opportunity to take the child, and she climbed the ratha, and she placed the child at the feet of Jagannath to seek blessings from Lord Jagannath. And to everybody's surprise, a garland from Lord Jagannath, it fell on the child, blessing the child. And this incident, it reassured Bhaktivinoda Thakur that this child was a very special child, and this child was sent by the Lord in response to his prayer. And it is mentioned that when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he was just about 2 or 3 years old. It is said that at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had brought some mangoes. And so it was mango season, and he had brought some mangoes home. So the children are, Bimala Prasad, our Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he, 2 or 3-year-old child, he went and grabbed one mango and he started eating that mango. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur called him, the small child. Oh, what have you done? You ate that mango? without offering to Krishna. How can you eat without offering to Krishna? We should eat only Krishna Prasad. First, you should offer to Krishna. Only then you should. So he mildly chastised that child. But the child took it very, very seriously. The child was thinking that I have done offense. I'm an offender. I've done a problem. So, sorry. So the child was thinking that I'm an offender, I've done a prad, and he resolved that he will never touch mango for the rest of his life. Actually, it is not an offense. It's a small child. Out of ignorance, he has done something. 2 to 3 year old child. But he was so serious. And he took that instruction so seriously. For the rest of his life, he never touched mango. Prabhupada was many times. The disciples, and he himself also used to go. So here is a very old portrait of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj as a boy. He must be probably 6 years, 7 years old. So it is said when he was 7 years old, he had completely memorized all these 700 shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, and he was able to explain every verse. And he was also doing proofreading of his father's publications. His father was publishing a monthly periodical. His father had started a printing press to propagate Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So at 7 years of age, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj was proofreading his father's periodicals. So you can see how sharp and how blessed this boy was. And later, it was he was educated in missionary school. He learned English, and then in college, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was at his time in mid 19th century. He had gone to college, so they were all highly educated. He was a magistrate, and his son was also likewise very highly educated. His English was, if you see some of his lectures and his writings, his letters, and his books. So very high English, Victorian English, the way what he was conversing and writing. So during his youth, he became very proficient in astronomy, and he wrote a book called Surya Siddhanta, which became a gold standard in astrological practice. Even today, it's a very renowned literature. And for his contribution to astronomy, he was given the title of Siddhanta Saraswati. Siddhanta Saraswati. So, and that title he retained for the rest of his life. And that's how he was called as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. All Acharyas, we call them Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur. So, around that time, he was also deeply involved in assisting his father. His father was publishing so many periodicals, so many books, and he was preaching, and so he would travel with his father. So he fully got involved in the mission of his father, assisting his father, and eventually he took initiation from his father. Told him that you should take initiation from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj had not accepted any disciple. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj went to Gaur Kishore Das Maharaj. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was illiterate. He didn't even know how to sign his name. So, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very highly erudite. He was already becoming a renowned scholar. So when he approached Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he refused to accept him as a disciple. So he went back and told his father that Gaur Kishore Das refused to accept me as a disciple. So he said, unless you become a disciple, your life is useless and I will not accept you. You don't come home. So he told him very strongly that it is very important for you to take initiation. This person is very qualified and you should take initiation from him. So he pleaded and came to a point. He pleaded and again he rejected. Gaur Krishna Maharaj, he rejected. And so like this went on many times. And finally he came to a point of desperation and he met him on a bridge. And he pleaded that if you do not accept me as your disciple, then I think my life is worthless and I should probably just end my life just jumping off this bridge. So when it came to that point where it was even, he was so serious about taking initiation, so determined to take initiation from Gaur Kishore Verma, then he prayed and he accepted as his disciple. And he was the only disciple and no other disciple of Gaur Kishore Maharaj. And then after that, it is, let me share with you. These are some pictures of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur during his youth. You see, as a brahmachari, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj is brahmachari, and this was his family photo. It's a very old photo. We can see Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur is here, and his mother Bhagavati Devi is here, and his brothers and sisters and all of them put together in one very old family photo. And this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Young man, brahmachari. And this is, why is this going? Yes. So this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj when he was, he was very inspired by his father to take charge of the movement and spearhead Gaudiya Vaishnavism and reach this message far and wide. And so, in order to seek the blessings of the Supreme Lord, he engaged himself in intense austerity. What was the austerity? He took a vow of chanting 1 billion names of the Supreme Lord. 1 billion. Shatakoti. So every day he would chant 3 lakh names of the Hare Krishna mantra. 3 lakh names. And so like that, he observed this vow, eating only once a day and chanting 3 lakh names every day. For 4 years, he did this very, very severe austerity. And then after that, this was in 1918, he started his mission. And he called that mission as Gaudiya Mission. Gaudiya Mission. Gaudiya Mutt. This was the mission that he started. This was in 1918. And around that time, he also had taken sannyas. He became a sannyasi. So he was a brahmachari and then he became a sannyasi. So he never got married. He was a Naishtika brahmachari. A brahmachari for all his celibate for all his life. And then, as he started this Gaudiya mission, in a matter of, he started his first center in Mayapur, the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which he called it as Chaitanya Mutt. And he installed the deities of Radha, Gandharvika, Giridhari. These are the first deities that he installed. And from then onwards, he started so many centers across the whole country. In 18 years, he had established 64 Gaudiya Mutts across the country. And there were, including one in Myanmar, in Rangoon, in Burma, and one here in London. He had sent his disciples to start a center here in London, and there was one in Germany. So And mind you, these were times when there were no WhatsApp, there was no email, there was no phone call. The only way of communication was through letters. Uh, and you can imagine the fastest mode of transport was a bullock cart. I think the railways were just getting introduced at that time in India. Across selected cities, there were rail connections. So, at a time when transportation was at such a primordial stage, communication was so difficult. Uh, in spite, and most importantly, the whole country was gripped with a nationalistic fervor. The whole country was in the freedom struggle. When he started in 1918, and that was the peak of all this uh, protests and demonstrations against the British Raj and all the youth getting involved in the freedom struggle. So it was during that time when the whole country was going through a turmoil that he managed to establish his Gaudiya Mutt across his 64 centers of Gaudiya Mutt, which was a great achievement uh, on its own. Uh, if you were to look at all the background that was going through, that he had faced, and uh, throughout uh, the rest of his days from 1918 onwards, he was uh, 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 involving, engaging the public. There were so many people who came to become his disciples. Uh, he was able to connect because of his. He was a towering scholar. Was a towering scholar who was expert in all the Vedic literatures, in presenting the essence of all the Vedic literatures. He had such a sharp memory. He said that once he would hear something, and he would never forget that. Whatever he's read 50 years back, he will still be able to reproduce that, paraphrase that. So, very sharp memory. He was he was a towering scholar of his times, and people used to shut up to engage debate with him, and he would be uh, he would be so bold, and he would be uncompromising in calling a spade a spade. If there were somebody who was deviating from the principles of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, he would not hesitate to actually expose them. And uh, so that way, there were many rivals, there were many enemies, because especially the caste Goswamis, because he was exposing them and they were going out of business. And also, this caste Brahmanas were very happy that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj is giving Brahman Diksha to so many people who are from all classes of society, and they were they were afraid that they will go out of business, and who will call them. So everybody starts following Sankirtana, then they will how will we maintain ourselves? And they had their own anxieties, and so uh, there were many attempts even to kill Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. But he was undeterred. He never compromised on his philosophy, and he would refute them with strong arguments and evidences from all the scriptures, from the Purana, from the Upanishads, from the Vedanta Sutra, from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, because he was an expert in all these literatures. Nobody could defeat him in any debate, any duel. They would fear great Mayavadi sannyasis, those who were followers of the impersonalists. They would shudder to get into a interview or a argument or a a debate, and he would, in fact, he would openly challenge. Yes, come on a debate. Let's discuss. What is your philosophy? Let us discuss. And based on this scripture, uh, let us examine what is the truth. So that way he was able to impress on the intelligent people of the society during his time. and so many of them came forward, embraced Gaudiya mission, became members of Gaudiya mission, dedicated their life to Gaudiya mission, became his disciples. Uh, there was one incident wherein there were these caste Goswamis. They are known as Nityananda Vamshas. So they paid 20,000 rupees. During that time, it's like huge 20,000 rupees during 1930s or so. They paid that amount to a police officer, and they told him that we are going to do some harm to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. So you take this money and you keep quiet. Don't take any action. They were bribing him so that they wanted to murder him because he was creating such a trouble to all their plans and their activities. So they wanted to murder him, and they thought that they will be able to get this police officer on their side. And then he said, "See, normally we accept all these bribes, but because this is a sadhu, I cannot take this bribe." So he said, "No, I cannot do this." So these are the circumstances which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had to face, all the kind of challenges he had to face during his times. So like that, here are some, it's very, very good to see some some selected pictures of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj. Here you can see how he's gathering support, and so many youngsters are joining his mission, and he's becoming successful in his preaching. Wherever he traveled, he was being welcomed, and people would throng to have his darshans. He was such a prolific preacher. Here's some images of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj with his books and literatures. And yes, we can see elderly sannyasi Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. And yes, he was such a prolific writer. It is very important to note. He had 3 printing press, and one in Chennai, one in Krishnanagar, and I think the other one, it was in Mayapur, I'm not sure. There were 3 of them, and from these he would be pumping out literatures day in and day out. He had it is unbelievable the kind of preaching that the vigor that these acharyas have shown. It's really unimaginable. He had started a monthly periodical called Harmonist. There was a daily newspaper called Nadia Prakash. Daily newspaper. And there were publications, monthly publications in other local languages like Assamese, Odia, all of that, which he had started. So there is one very famous interaction. There was this very renowned leader in India called Madan Mohan, and he's the one who was one of the founders of the Gita Press Gorakhpur. So he was a contemporary of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj. So when he heard that Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj is running a daily newspaper called Nadia Prakash, so he wondered. He said, "What is every day there is something to some spiritual subject matter to talk and write about. There is so much to write about." So then Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, "See, in an ordinary city like Calcutta or Chennai, that time it was called Madras, there are so many newspapers. I remember when I was in Bangalore, I remember there is so many newspapers. Herald is there, Times of India is there, Indian Express is there, Financial is there. Are dozens and dozens of newspapers to share the news of one city." And this was the analogy which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. He said, for one ordinary city of this material world to cover the news of what is happening, so many newspapers are there every day. So what to talk about the spiritual world, that the material creation itself is just 1/4 of the total creation. The remaining 3/4 is spiritual creation. And there are so many the planets, and there are so many the Lord is engaged in eternal pastimes with his devotees. So how much more there should be to write if of the activities uh, and the teachings of the Lord and their devotees. I can, if given an opportunity, I can come up with a newspaper every minute. And so this was how he spoke to Madan Mohan Malviya. He was shocked to hear. So he was so prolific in his writings and his distribution, and he considered this literature and his books as Brihat Mridanga. It's like a Mridanga. You bang a Mridanga, you can hear maybe 20 yards, 30 yards. But these books, they can go all over the place. And in similar lines, Prabhupada, he emphasized this point that he used to remember his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj used to say, if you at all get money, then distribute books. You write and print and distribute books. So that's how this book, this is a time when devotees also here. Hare Krishna movement, they distribute literatures. This is what we should be doing. So, so these were some, and so he had, uh, uh, so he had a vision that during that some of his disciples should go to the West and they should preach the message of Lord Chaitanya. And we all know of uh, this great meetings of Bhaktisiddhanta. Now you can see when he was, during his time, he used to, this is the British Raj, and he used to call up all the officers of the British Raj to Mayapur, and he used to present, he used to seek ways and means to connect with them and share with them the message of Bhagavad Gita. You can see all these women, these men, they're all English. Here you can see he's standing with the governor of Bengal. I forget his name. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj is here with some of the. He had visited Mayapur and declared that this is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And you see, he was such a revolutionary. Never before had anybody heard of a sannyas traveling in car, because they're supposed to be lounge and they are supposed to be very austere. They're not supposed to. So he completely changed the perception of whatever can help propagating the message of the Lord. We should adopt it and engage in the Lord's mission. So he was the first person, and he encouraged his disciples to travel in car, travel from city to city, and spread the message. You can see he's wearing coat and suit. These are all unheard of any sannyasi who was changing his attire and adopting a different dress. So he reasoned, if it is helping me to connect with a particular audience and invite them, and so why not? We should adopt all means and ways which can help us to spread the message across. So these are all based on Rupa Goswami's principles of Yukta Vairagya. He demonstrated how everything belongs to Krishna and everything should be utilized in the service of Krishna. And in the similar lines, Srila Prabhupada also, he conducted the mission with this principle in mind. So in that case, he was a very, very revolutionary Acharya. And we just, some weeks back, we talked about this famous meeting of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj giving initiation, Diksha, to Srila Prabhupada. This is the first meeting in Calcutta of Srila Prabhupada with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. So that way, and he wound up his pastimes, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Maharaj, and it was one of his last instructions to Srila Prabhupada, that he should go to the West and propagate the message of Lord Chaitanya. That was his instruction. And Srila Prabhupada is a very loving and obedient disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, he fulfilled that order, and in a grand style, he propagated the message, took the Hare Krishna mantra all over the world, and glorified his spiritual master. He always considered himself. Prabhupada's mood was that whatever I have achieved, it is because of the blessings of my Guru Maharaj. It is by his mercy that today we have been able to take the mission all over the world. So these are some quick, brief recollections of this great Vaishnava Acharya, by whose blessings today you and me are sitting and talking about Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. We are chanting Hare Krishna mantra. And we should all feel very grateful for these personalities, these divine personalities who were sent by the Lord on a spiritual mission to rejuvenate the spiritual consciousness of the world. So on that note, I will stop here. Let us chant one round of Hare Krishna mantra, and then if there are any questions, any comments, we can discuss. I'm playing Prabhupada's Japa. Will chant 108 times in sync with Srila Prabhupada.
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakti. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. So that was 108 times japa. If any of you have any comments, any questions, please feel free.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for sharing such an inspirational Swami's life. I often think that, when he says that in past things were easy, things were good. And I feel that I think in any era, any lifespan, the things are difficult all the time. It's just that when we look back, we think that was easy. So despite all the difficulties at that young age, it's God gifted, and what he achieved and what he gave the world a message. And then that was very inspired. So thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Yes, very inspiring. In fact, if we relate with the Acharyas on their struggles and their teachings, it is a great encouragement for every one of us as sadhakas to take inspiration and live our devotional lives. So it's in fact, that's one of the reasons why as a part of Club Tattva, we have in the evening, currently the devotees are reading the biography of Srila Prabhupada on what were the challenges he faced to actually spread the movement, run the organization, and more details about his life, his teachings. So yes, these are I agree with you that they are very inspiring to hear about these acharyas. Yes, Sindhu Mataji, you had something to say. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
You mentioned about a disciple going to London and establishing, but what happened to the establishment after that?
So it couldn't take much ground. They were able to. They came. They spent some time, and they were having some. They had some lecture engagements. and I think there was one person who took initiation, but more or less uh, those disciples who were sent by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, he had sent two disciples, one Bon Maharaj, one sannyasi. The other sannyasi was, I think it was Tirtha Maharaj, if I'm not wrong. But they couldn't meet with much success, and then they had to come back to Calcutta, and then so he appreciated their efforts, but he was hoping that they will be a much more impactful presence and establishment in the West, and that was his desire, and that was fulfilled by Srila Prabhupada. That was the order that he received, Srila Prabhupada received from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj just 2 weeks before his passing away. When he was in Puri, this is in 1936, December 15th or 14th, he writes, Prabhupada writes a letter to to his Guru, that you have so many sannyasi disciples and brahmacharis, and they are all rendering so many services to you. They're personally rendering service to you. I'm a grahastha, I'm a householder. What can I do for you? I cannot live with you. And I cannot render much of a personal service to you. So he wrote a letter like this, Srila Prabhupada, to hear from Bhaktisiddhanta. So just 2 weeks before he passed away. So he responded saying that it will be good if you can broadcast the message of Lord Chaitanya in the West to the. It will do good to you and to the people whom you preach. So he gave this instruction, and Prabhupada took this instruction because this was the same instruction that he received during his first meeting in 1922. This letter came 1936 to Prabhupada, and his first meeting was 1922. Both the times the instruction were the same. First, during his first meeting, the instruction was, "You're all young, educated men. Why don't you take up the mission of Lord Chaitanya and broadcast his message?" And at that time, he had argued, no, we are India's national freedom struggle is going on. This is what is more important is we've discussed all this at length. And then when he received the second time, when he got the same instruction, then he fixed up. He was he made that instruction. He took that instruction as his life and soul, Srila Prabhupada. So it took him for him to reach in 1965. He reached Boston. So 1936, he received the order from his Guru. That means for 30 years, he was preparing and he was making various efforts. He started Back to Godhead magazine, which he would personally write. He would personally edit, proofread, publish, and personally distribute single-handedly. And he would seek various lecture engagements, opportunities to talk about Bhagavad Gita. So like that, I mean, all these things are very wonderfully described in the biographies which we are reading in Club Tattva. So yeah, so that is some history.
So same thing happened even in Germany.
Yeah.
The missionaries didn't stay for too long in Germany.
Yeah, no, it couldn't take much ground. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone. We'll meet all of you next year. This is probably the last session of the year, and we'll look forward to some more reflections on the Bhagavad Gita and take some new resolutions in the new year for becoming more serious practice of Krishna consciousness. So wishing all of you wonderful holidays, vacations, a Krishna conscious vacation. And I believe our clubs also will resume in the new year. So thank you very much. I think before we close, Isha, you had something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe not today, maybe some other day. I mean, maybe if you can
Sure.
take us through the challenges that Prabhupada had faced when he moved to abroad, like how did he spread his teachings?
Oh,
I mean, it
yes,
would
yes,
be,
yes. We shall discuss. Yes, we shall discuss.
yeah.
All
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
one
go
small
ahead.
clarification I had. I think in the beginning of sessions, you mentioned like Krishna said like abandon dharmas and then come towards me to
Yes,
have the special
Krishna said that.
consciousness, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, how should we interpret this as? Like, I mean, like like people will be in different religions, like he may be in Islam or in Christianity or in Jainism, Buddhism. Do they have to leave their religions to achieve
No. That
Krishna
is
consciousness?
no. That is not dharma which Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying
Okay.
here in the sense dharma is referring to. We have taken up the many ways of looking at it. We have dharma is referring to various duties that we have assumed as something very important. So, like for example, I have a desha dharma, I have a pati dharma, I have a patni dharma, I have a dharma of a son, dharma of a businessman, dharma of my. So we have so many occupations. I have dharma, I have a duty towards devatas, I have a duty towards my community. Like that, there are so many dharmas that we have. But the most important of all our dharma is our duty to the Supreme Lord. So Krishna is saying that you must prioritize your duties in a way that your first and foremost attention and your time and energy should be devoted towards uh, following my instructions, devoting yourself and surrendering it to me. So that's why he's saying, give up all other occupations. Sarva dharman parityaj, give up. Because uh, people are busy in doing everything else except pursuing uh, the path of surrender to Krishna. So, which is Krishna is trying to highlight this point. And by taking up our by taking up this path of devotion and surrender to Krishna, you automatically fulfill all your obligations to every other activity in your life. That is taken care. It is just like if you pour water to the root, automatically the water goes to every branch, leaf, and twig. But your duty is to offer water to the root. That's what Krishna is saying. Your most important duty is to surrender to me. That is first and foremost.
Makes sense. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna,
Yes.
Kalakanta.
Yes, Mataji, good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. Sorry, I have to take a leave now. I've got a granddaughter, not very
Yes,
well.
Yeah, take care.
We'll catch up later.
Yeah, next year we'll see you.
Thank you, Kalakanta, for lovely demonstration of the pictures and loved it, every moment of it. Thank you.
Yes. Very good to have you as well. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all again next year. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.